Final word, Adam Collins, Geoff Lemon. Geoff, you've been looking at the wonderful world of Afghanistan cricket during the week, which we've done from time to time. We say there's politics at Jolimont. There is also, I was going to say there's also politics at Kabul. I'm not entirely sure that's where Afghanistan cricket's located, but wherever it's located, they've been busy.
Yeah, being the captain of the Afghanistan team seems a bit like one of those games where you sit up in the chair and then people throw a baseball to try to hit the target to drop you in the water. So Asghar Afghan, the guy who changed his name to represent his country because he was so proud of being from Afghanistan that he was like, I'm just going to call it was like me changing my name to Geoff Australia.
Maybe you should.
That shows,
maybe you
I
should. Don't rule it out.
Might be easier to might get a gig on Australian TV if I did that. Or hosting a breakfast news show or something.
Let's not get carried away.
Aussie Bob. So Asghar Afghan's got dunked again. You will remember, Adam, he got sacked just before the 2019 World Cup when they brought in Mr. Universe Gulbuddin Naib for a spectacular tournament, really, to captain that side. Before the World Cup was even over, before the final had been played, they'd already sacked Gulbuddin. They'd appointed Rahmat Shah to be the Test captain at the same time as they appointed Gulbuddin for one dayers. So Rahmat Shah was the Test captain for about 2 months and then got sacked before captaining a Test match because they made Rashid Khan captain across all formats after that World Cup. Then they went back to Asghar Afghan, 6 months later or a year later, popped him back in charge of the Test and ODI formats. So against Zimbabwe recently, Afghanistan lost the first Test and then won the second. Celebrations, hooray! They've won like 3 out of 6 of their Test matches or something. Incredible record thus far. Asghar Afghan was part of the match-winning partnership, put on 307, made a big 100 in that second Test, and then apparently an investigative committee, so-called, at the Afghanistan Cricket Board investigated the first Test and said that they didn't like the fact that they'd lost it and it was all the fault of the captain who'd made mistakes in the field, and so they sacked him after he'd captained to win in the second Test, but he didn't win the first one. I mean, come on, like if you're playing I know Zimbabwe's not all that hot stuff at the moment, but there's still a Test side to beat. There's still not an easy opposition to push over. So they've got rid of him. They've popped in Hashmatullah Shahidi now to lead in the Test matches and ODIs. Rahmat Shah, who was previously the Test match and didn't get to captain a game as Test captain, is now the vice captain in those two formats. And Rashid Khan, I believe, is still the T20 captain but he was named on a press release as being the T20 vice captain, but there was no T20 captain named, so I'm pretty sure they mean that he's actually the T20 captain. But anyway, all of that has happened in this space of time.
Big deep breath. We'll keep an eye on that wheel of fortune in Afghanistan cricket. Hopefully they keep making strides on the field because they're fast off it.
He's got to be in the. He's like Asghar still has to be in the team, right? He's made 160 odd in their last Test match.
I mean, you would
assume he's got to be coming out to Australia.
You would assume he's coming to Australia, but I mean, look, that's going to be, as you say, a point of interest as we get towards November at Hobart when they play Australia in a Test match for the first time, and presumably when Australia go to India to play Afghanistan next year per the schedule. I'm sure they'll try and find a way to not do that, but in theory, they'll play 2 Test matches against Australia in the next 12 months. Right, where there is going to be a Test match is this week at Lords, which is exciting because the 2 grandstands have finished. Well, as finished as they're going to be before the Test starts on Wednesday, the Compton and the Edgeridge. They look fantastic, Geoff. I can't tell you how good they look either side of the press box there. So that will be a part of the theatre, I suppose, on day one. Some unusual changes to the England squad since we last recorded. The main one being that Ben Foakes tore his hamstring slipping on a sock in the Surrey dressing room after their game against Middlesex, which was galling for him because you think about how long Ben Foakes has waited for a chance to keep at home. There's always been a Bairstow or a Butler in front of him. But finally, he was the incumbent with the aforementioned pair, having been at the IPL, thus rested for this New Zealand series, and then he goes and tears his hamstring in really weird circumstances. So that means that James Bracey will play, will debut, will wicket keep, which probably means he'll bat at number 7 instead of batting in the top 3, which we thought Bracey might do if they were to pick him to make his debut this summer. He was probably going to be the spare batsman, but now he gets the chance to wicket keep and bat at 7. Sam Billings was brought in.
He's more your sort of long innings player, right? More than your wicket-keeping dasher type.
I think that's right. Well, we've seen him play so nicely this year for Gloucestershire. The half-century he made against Middlesex a few weeks ago was top class in tough conditions for the visitors. So it makes sense that he's been batting number 3 and keeping at county level too. So he's been kind of covering both bases. And now he gets his chance. Sam Billings is in as cover for both. So Billings doesn't keep at the moment for Kent, but obviously has done it for both his county and his country in white ball cricket. A lot of experience, been around the squad for, well, I suppose 6 years since he made his one-day international debut. So whilst it looks a bit left field in theory, it makes sense that a guy with that much international experience would be brought in if they need someone at the last minute. Likewise, Haseeb.
Yeah, and it's historical. It's going all the way back to 1868, and Thomas Hearn, was it, the guy who was the wicketkeeper because their normal wicketkeeper hadn't shown up, and then the keeper shows up a couple of hours late and asks to get subbed into the game, and the other team won't let him, and it's classic.
And our dusty old bastard from a couple of weeks ago who rocked up at the Oval having got a cab from Trent Bridge to wicketkeep for England and arriving just in the nick of time as play started. So hopefully they won't be in that position tomorrow. Haseeb Hamid is also in the squad, which is pretty exciting because he won't play. I mean, he's but the fact that he's there, I think that's well handled, Geoff. I think that, like, if you're going to integrate this guy back into the mainframe, sort of with a view to him playing Test cricket down the track, it doesn't hurt for him to be in the squad for a couple of Test matches. Look, maybe he won't be in the squad when India are here later in the year and the full complement of players are available, but just sort of a fortnight, gets to wear the tracksuit again, gets to feel loved and knows that he isn't that far away.
Yeah, they're just planting a flag, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so.
They're just telling him that it's a pat on the back. You've done well enough thus far to be in the frame, that if there were a couple of injuries, you would be next in. So, take that encouragement back to Notts and keep doing what he's been doing.
The Anderson Broad situation's an interesting one because, well, of course, they both want to play 7 Test matches, don't they? Whether they do or don't, yet to be seen, but they're both out there. In the case of Anderson, he'll join Alistair Cook on 161 Test matches, which he's very proud of. He's 8 wickets away from 1,000 in first-class cricket. The last seamer to do that in the UK was Andy Caddick back in 2005. So that's a serious bit of history, right? 1,000 wickets really does mean something. We've seen that Anderson, played. I think he played 5 of the 6 Test matches last summer. Broad missed the first one and played the next 5. So how they pull that together is yet to be seen. But I'd be kind of surprised if they don't both play this week.
I think they probably will both play the first, because it's that pecking order thing. As long as they've played the first one, they're both in the best team, and then they can rotate and rest from there. But the 5 India tests are so back to back to back that I don't think you can play any of your fast bowlers. Normally if you have back-to-back tests, so 3 days between tests, you then have a long break of 10 days or so before the next one. That's not the case in this series. Every test is 3, 4. I think the longest break is 5 days, 4 or 5. So they're basically having a test every week, which means it's very hard for you can't have a fast bowler play all 5 of those. So yeah, that can't happen, and fair enough. I enjoyed the photo shoot that went up. So there was the photo of Mark Wood that everyone was responding to with his crazy eyebrow. There was it was like to have a bit of fun at the end of the shoot thing. Mark Wood's doing that. Dom Bess is like waving the shirt around, and then there was just James Anderson just like looking stern as ever, like down the barrel of the camera. I'm holding a cricket ball. This is all I think about. I was like, it occurred to me that like, why have we never called him Angry Anderson before? Because we should.
Life's tough. So what? I'm alive. Right. That'll mean nothing to our England listeners, and that's a good thing. One other thing about Stuart Broad is that I suppose that
War of the Rose tattoo.
War of the Rose tattoo, exactly. This was the thing when I bought the fucking Batmobile. I shouldn't swear about the Batmobile. I do love the thing. It was that everyone was like, "Let's get Angry Anderson down. Let's get Angry Anderson involved." I'm like, Angry Anderson is a full-on lunatic. He's run alongside Pauline Hanson and all those kind of nut jobs in the political sphere in recent years. He's to be nowhere near the Batmobile in its current incarnation.
He's a newly energised far right absolute like nutcase. So probably don't get him involved.
No.
You don't necessarily want him to have a megaphone. But look, we cannot deny the lyrical power of Bound for Glory.
No,
we just can't do it.
It's a banger. Stuart Broad, some interesting analysis around the fact that, like, I think the way that he's changed and the way he's been interpreted as a bowler in the last 2 years, well documented the lengths that he bowled in 2009 and the preparation he put into the David Warner contest. And again, last year, he was much fuller, a lot of leg before wickets, a lot of bowls. So looking forward to watching him go about it. Also looking forward to watching Ollie Robinson, assuming he debuts. I like that he acknowledged in his pre-test comments that, like, he's... I was going to use one descriptor there, that he's a very aggressive person on the field. I watched him play a game last year at close quarters down at Radlett, and abusing the umpire and sledging batsmen every ball. Like, he's that kind of character. So it might shake up the sensibilities of the MCC members if that guy gets a debut. But he's a very, very good bowler. 6'6", lands it in a shoebox, moves it both ways. I mean, you hate to make comparisons to Glenn McGrath, but that's what he looks like. He's a very similar kind of bowler. Maybe Craig Overton gets that final spot, but it feels like Robinson is going to get a debut, given they put him up for media a couple of days ago.
Neck and neck, given their skills in terms of shouting at other players. There's not much to separate the two of them there. But Robinson's the one with the media push behind him, and that wouldn't have happened if they hadn't been putting him up. So, I think the tea leaves are pretty apparent on that one. And New Zealand haven't got Trent Boult because, like we were talking about with the Australian players before, having got back from the IPL and gone through all of that drama, he basically said, I can't get over there and put in and be prepared enough to compete properly. So he will be there for the Test Champs final.
Yep.
But he won't be there for the two tests beforehand.
Yeah, he went home to see his family, and who could begrudge him that after what happened in India? So he'll be here later in the summer. It does mean that Kyle Jamieson will lead the attack, probably. I mean, alongside with Tim Southey and Neil Wagner, but Wagner obviously won't use the new ball. So great attack, brilliantly balanced attack. But Jamieson, 36 test wickets at 13 so far in his 6 matches. It's not as though he's going under the radar or anything like that, but he's only really played through the pandemic, so this will be a great opportunity for him. I spoke to him last week. He's only spent 4 days in the UK before this trip. Never bowled here, never used a Duke's ball with the exception of some training. That will be very exciting to watch him, presumably from the pavilion end with the slope there. BJ Watling's announced that this will be his final series. 35 years of age, nearly 4,000 test runs at 38. 8 centuries. Of course, he was part of that record 352 run stand with Brendan McCullum against India in 2014, which was the highest for the 6th wicket in Test cricket. He's been a wonderful contributor over a long stretch of time, and they arrive as the number 1 ranked team, and they get the chance in the World Test Championship. I mean, what a great way to go at it would be for him.
Oh, absolutely. One of the best players ever named after a sex act. BJ Watling is probably, certainly since Cameron Bangers Bancroft played his final Test match. But he's a player who's always been undersold because he's not super exciting or dramatic to look at, but he's the guy who comes in really difficult situations and does something absolutely bloody minded, bats for 2 days or whatever it might be, and he's done that enough times that it's definitely no fluke. So here's hoping. I'd have to say my heart is probably with New Zealand getting something out of Lords this time around.
Yes.
At least to make up for what happened in 2019.
Yeah, or indeed 2015 when they played a wonderful test at Lords. It was a very high-scoring affair, but didn't quite get over the line due to Ben Stokes. So that's going to be brilliant. As I say, New Zealand come in ranked number 1. I don't think they're thrilled that the full complement of England players aren't available. I was asked this on another podcast during the week. What I thought of that, my response was that I don't think they'd be resting players if it were Australia or India, and yet they're willing to do it against the number 1 team in the world, irrespective of the IPL. So I'm not diminishing the importance of rest, by the way. It's more just subliminally where New Zealand sit in the pecking order, which to me feels a bit off.
There was still that weirdness with Chris Silverwood talking about India, saying, playing India will be great preparation for the Ashes.
Oh, yeah. Well,
it is so weird to me. Playing the number 1 and 2 ranked sides in the world, New Zealand and India, that'll be great preparation for the Ashes.
Yeah.
everything is preparation for the Ashes.
I think
single match you ever play.
Yeah, I think Silverwood would want those comments back because they jarred, and it didn't feel right, did it? That India and New Zealand are out here yet. It's all seemingly about the Ashes, and in a way, that's a lot of the dialogue already about the county championship, which we'll move into now. Has been around players who might be able to get on the plane to Australia later in the year.